Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go over creating a positive, negative space drawing using a reductive drawing technique, which means that I'm drawing by taking away material. If you haven't already, please read the introduction to positive, negative space on the week 2 page, which will show some examples of how this technique can be used in practice. I'm going to do a couple of drawings in this video. The first one is just of a single object so that you can see the process a little bit more closely. And then the second drawing has overlapping and stacked objects similar to what you will be doing for your assignment. The first thing I'm going to do is take some of my Vine charcoal and tone the page. Since Vine charcoal sticks are pretty long, I like to break off a smaller piece so that I have more control. Toning your paper just means that you're adding any type of tone or value to the page so that you're not starting with a totally blank surface. I'm toning my paper by using my charcoal in a vertical motion, but you can do this any way that you want to, as long as you try to keep things pretty even. The goal is to get a nice, consistent texture over the whole page. For the purposes of this video, I'm drawing within a smaller square, but you can extend your ground all the way out to the edge of your paper. Once you have your charcoal laid down, you're going to come in with your eraser. Again, I'm using scissors to cut off smaller pieces of my eraser so that I can get a sharper edge because I'm going to be carving into that charcoal field that I just applied. So to start, you're going to be erasing out chunks of negative space, but you can see that I'm also using my eraser to just lay in some quick exploratory lines so that I have sort of a general sense of where I'm going, especially in these early moments of the drawing. I like to approach this almost as though I'm making a sculpture and I'm chiseling something out of stone. So I'm going to start really broadly and work my way in, getting more and more precise as I go. In terms of the Vine charcoal that we're using, some of you may have worked with this medium before, or at least tried it out in your sketchbook. Vine charcoal is the lightest type of charcoal that you can use. It's going to give you a very smoky, soft texture, but it's generally way lighter than compressed charcoal or the charcoal pencils that you have in your art kit. Vine charcoal is really cool because if you look closely at the sticks that you have in your pack, you can actually see that they're just burnt twigs. You can even see the little stems still on some of them. A simplified way to describe positive-negative space is that it's a way of categorizing forms into subject and background. For assignment 2, your still life subjects are going to be represented as positive space, and everything else in the background is negative space. Surfaces, as in the surface that your objects are sitting on, like a tabletop or pedestal, are always a little bit of a gray area in terms of which category they belong in. Whether they're object or background, but this is up to the artist. For this type of assignment, people usually don't include the surface that the still life objects are on because it tends to block out a bunch of your objects, but if you feel really inspired, you can definitely experiment with that and see how it goes. Working on a toned surface is something that's going to become way more important next week when we start to get into value. But in this exercise, you can start to get a feel for working into that field of charcoal. You can just start to notice the way that it affects the look of what you draw on the page. You're getting an overall softer, smudgier, more atmospheric type of drawing versus the stark black and white ink drawing that you did in your sketchbook. You can also see how the subjects sit comfortably within the space. They're not being pushed forward against all of that white. If you've already done assignment 1, this process should feel very familiar to you. You're just following the outside edge of your object with your eye and translating that onto the page. You'll see from the way that I'm working that there is some back and forth involved in this process. Sometimes you can see me erase too far or realize that I need to adjust the proportion of something, and I just come back in with some more charcoal and try again. It's really tough to get things right on the first try, and sometimes you just have to struggle with it, especially at the beginning of your drawing. There's definitely a bit of a push and pull between erasing and drawing. A big part of this assignment is building your own still life and starting to think about composition and how what you're drawing translates into the space of the picture plane. So working this way really makes you think about objects as building blocks that move your eye around the page. I tend to think that when something is interesting to you to draw, that this translates into the work itself and makes the drawing interesting to look at for the viewer. I know that this exercise can seem a little bit stuffy and academic when you're doing it for the first time, but having the ability to simplify forms this way can actually be enormously helpful as a drawing tool when it comes to process and composition. The reason that this is a stack still life is because it's going to create a lot of moments for you to think about the negative space that's in between things. It's really a tough challenge to flatten your objects down into silhouettes when they're overlapping in space. It's easy to lose track of where things begin and end, and you have to observe closely what the overall mass looks like when you put everything together. This helps you break down how you think an object should look and understand it as a series of planes and lines. So that is positive negative space. Go ahead and give it a shot and see where it goes, and happy drawing.